Boro breach the Championship's best defence as the points are shared at Turf Moor. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and another episode of Project Boro. And yes, my voice is still absolutely shot. And no, it's not because I went to Burnley last night and was in the away end. It's just the fact that this cold has been kicking my ass for long enough now. But yes, I was there last night. The wait for a elusive first away win in the league in the flesh for me goes on, unfortunately. But Boro come away from Turf Moor with what in the end I think was a very fair, a very well thought out point on the road against a very good team in a very tough place. In very, very difficult conditions as well, it has to be said. The wind, the rain, it was a horrible night to play football, really. And I think Boro showed some really good, resolute, resilient, battling, hard qualities to come away from this game. In a game where you could say, looking at the second half, we actually had the better chances to maybe go on and win the game. But I predicted it would be a 1-1 draw. I thought that the best attack, or one of the best attacks versus the best defence, would counteract one another and cancel each other out in some form, and that is exactly what happened. Now, I know I said I would vlog this game. I never quite got to vlog it, unfortunately, because of where I was stood in the away end. I never quite gotten a good view to fully vlog the game, but I did get this, if you're watching on YouTube, when the Boro goal went in. Win. Absolute limbs in the away end, but a good point for Boro, as I say, and I would have took it before kick-off, so I'm not going to complain about Boro picking up a point here. I think it's a very good one for us. As we all know, Burnley had only conceded 6 times in the league all season. I don't think they'd conceded a goal at Turf Moor since September, so Boro were able to do something that not many teams have done this season, which I think is a massive vote in confidence for us. And we'll delve deep into the game. Now, as always, the starting lineup dropped, and it was a pretty strong one from a Boro point of view. Dieng was back in goal, which we've sort of thought he would be for a while now, and we will get into Seny Dieng because their equaliser is certainly a topic of conversation right now. The back four remained as is. Dale Fry kept his place, interestingly enough, and Dyke still started on the right-hand side with Edmondson and Borges in there as well. Barlasser and Hackney were in the midfield too. The midfield, or the attacking three in front, was pretty much as expected as well. We sort of all had a feeling Bergzorg would probably start this one, and he did with Azaz and Dork. And then that usual flip of a coin between Conway and Elath. He went with Tommy Conway in this game. We'll get onto him as well a little bit later. But it was a very strong Boro team, a lot of good players in there, and a couple of fringe players which I thought did exceptionally well, which we'll talk about when we get into the individual performances. But first half was a tough one for Boro, if I'm honest. And although, you know, we talk about one team being an incredible attack, the other being an incredible defence, it was actually flipped on its head somewhat in the first half, because it was attack versus defence for the majority of it. And although Boro took the lead in the 13th minute and had another notable opportunity via Ben Doak not too long after, which he shot just wide, it was Burnley dominance for that first half. You know, absolute dominance from the majority of the first half. Boro, however, did take the lead, and you could say it was against the run of play in the 13th minute. One of Boro's, if not our first real foray into the Burnley defensive third, led to Boro taking the lead, and it was some great play down the right-hand side. And I don't know how he found himself where he did. Anthony Dijksteel was in acres of space onside in that right-hand channel. But so much has got to be said for Dan Barlasser's fantastic ball His through ball into Dijksteel was absolutely perfect. It takes 3 players out of the game completely, and it's the sort of quality you need, really, when you're breaching the best defence in the Championship. It was an outstanding ball from Dan Barlas, a proof of the quality that he can offer in this Boro team. And I've also got to say, Dijksteel, he took it so well. His first touch to take the ball was outstanding. To then take it away from the defenders and dink it over the goalkeeper was absolutely fantastic. And it's Dijksteel's first league goal for Boro in over 100 appearances. Obviously, he got his first ever Boro goal at Ellen Road in the League Cup earlier in that 3-0 win in August. So, yeah, Dijksteel, maybe he's one that only rocks up in big games, but his 2 Boro goals, one come at Ellen Road, one come at Burnley, not bad going for him, but yeah, given how good his performance was, which again I'll get to, yeah, if there was going to be a goal scorer, Dijksteel's probably at the top of that list. It was such a well-taken goal, a well-carved-out goal, great ball from Dan Barlasser, and in a half where Boro didn't really have much at all, barring moments. It was really important we took one, because had Burnley scored first in this game, I think it changes massively. If they score the first goal, they're probably one of the best, if not the best suited team in the league to protect and set up to defend that lead. So I think if Boro were to stand any chance from getting something from this game, it was imperative we scored first. And in a half where we were dominated for large parts, we simply had to take advantage of one of these moments, and thankfully we did. But as I say, after Boro scored, it was absolute Burnley dominance from that moment on. You'll probably see by the momentum on screen, it was just all Burnley after we scored. And I think maybe because I was in the ground, it felt like we were under more pressure than perhaps we were, because looking back at the highlights, Burnley had a lot of possession, a lot of territory, and they spent the majority of the first half in Boro's defensive third and defensive half. However, I wouldn't say they tested us all that much. So I think this is sort of credit to Burnley and how they reacted. I thought they responded incredibly well to going behind and basically starved Boro of possession, starved Boro of any real opportunities. As I say, Ben Doak had one going the other way, which maybe had to go in to give Boro a chance of winning this game. But other than that, it was all Burnley in terms of them constantly coming towards Boro's goal, corner after corner, cross after cross, shot after shot that were getting blocked. But equally, as much as it was Burnley dominance, they never forced any Dieng into any big saves. And I think that's credit to how well Boro defended in that first half, because we were under it, but we limited Burnley to basically pop shots from range, pop shots from outside the area, hopeful crosses. And I thought, given we were under so much pressure in the end of that first half, that final sort of half an hour, I thought Boro stood up to it extremely well in terms of limiting Burnley from really, really big opportunities and just coping with what was a barrage at times of just possession, coming towards our goal time and time again. It was just Burnley attack versus Boro defence, and Boro stood up to it extremely well. But despite that, you could also make the argument that just down to Burnley's perseverance and pressure, a goal was coming. And I think the only real shame here is how it came about, because unfortunately it wasn't via Burnley carving Boro's defence open with a really great move. It came from, well, bad goalkeeping, you could say. I don't know how much of this was down to the conditions, which were really rough on the night, but this goal looks worse the more you watch it, and it looks worse on replay as to what it did in the ground at the time, because Connor Roberts, a right-footed right back, finds himself in field. He's surrounded by Boro defenders and midfielders, and the first point I'll make is no one engaged, no one tried to close him down, no one tried to block the shot. Is it because he's a right-footed right-back cutting on his left? They maybe naively thought, well, nothing's going to come of this, but Boro should know, and I'm sure we've seen many, many times over the last season or so, how many goals we've conceded from outside the area when we've not closed down the opposition. I still feel like there are enough spare bodies in that area at that time to engage Connor Roberts. It's not like if they step out, they're leaving space for any other else of the Burnley attackers. I think one or two can quite easily close him down. They don't. They allow Roberts to get a shot off, which is the first point to which this goal is avoidable. However, I find it very difficult to defend Seny Dieng in this moment. You know, the ball loops over him. It's not arrowed into the corner. It's not even in the corner. It's floated. It's caressed, looped over his head. He's off his line. He doesn't anticipate it. He's flat-footed. He reacts too late. I don't know if he was unsighted or what, but I think quite simply, he's been caught out. It's as simple as that. He simply wasn't anticipating the shot, and he reacted too slowly to preventing it from going in the back of his net. And it's a goal that, the brutal honesty is, the bottom line is, he shouldn't be conceding that. You know, he shouldn't be conceding that. It is a hopeful left-footed curler from Connor Roberts. Fair play to him. You know, he's tried it. It's come off. But Boro's goalkeeper should not be getting beaten from there, and we should be closing the shot down regardless. And it comes back to that argument, you know, that certain areas of Boro's team just aren't quite top of the table quality, and I think goalkeeper is definitely one of them. And, you know, Seny Dieng, I think, is either second worst or third worst for goals prevented in the Championship this season. I think for all that he is good in possession and, you know, he's technically great with how Boro want to play out, I think when it comes to shot and goal prevention, he is one of the weakest in the league. And I think when you are a team like Boro, who are in the playoffs, and you want to take that extra next step into top two, you need a goalkeeper who's going to save you 5 to 10 to 15 points a season. Seny's probably losing us 5 points plus so far this season with some of the goals we've conceded and some that he maybe should have prevented. So it is an issue that has been, you know, bubbling under the surface of late, and it's maybe one that's getting louder with Solbryn having come in over the last few weeks, done pretty well. Is there starting to be a need for Boro to test out Solbryn coming in for Seny Dieng? I don't know. You know, it's a big, big deal changing your goalkeeper, so I don't think it's something we can flippantly just do. But maybe it will be considered if this continues, because, yeah, it's a poor goal to concede, and it's one Seny will not want to look back on at all. And it gets Burnley back into the game, but I'm not going to pretend like they didn't deserve it. You know, I thought their reaction to Boro going behind or going ahead, the reaction to them going behind was very, very good. And I think going into half-time, their pressure probably warranted an equaliser, and you go in sort of odd as even. But second half, I thought Boro were fantastic. You know, I think we were a lot better second half in possession. You know, arguably first half, I think, again, partly down to how well Burnley pressed us and put us under pressure. Boro equally, I don't think, were very good on the ball. First half, I don't think we were very composed. We, you know, at times were just hacking it clear. We weren't playing out. We just lost that calmness and composure, you know, with the ball and in possession. And every time we got the ball back, we were just giving it straight back to them in the first half. However, in the second, I found we were a lot more composed on the ball. We kept the ball a lot better, and we knocked Burnley out of their rhythm. You know, maybe we showed them less respect second half, but it was a far more even contest in the second half. And arguably, Boro had the better chances, you know, to win the game. There were some really big moments for us. You know, George Edmondson had a header from a free kick, which I thought was nesting in the bottom corner that he should have done better with. Bergzorg had a really good opportunity after Borges crossed in from the left. A great ball in from Borges. Bergzorg tried to sort of turn side-foot it. I think if it had come in from the right-hand side, he'd have gotten a much better correction. But I think because he's right-footed, it was an awkward one, and he sort of side-footed it straight to James Trafford, which was another big chance. Lath was also played through by Finazaz early second half, or late on in the second half it might have been. And this is where I go back to Seny Dieng maybe not being a top goalkeeper and him costing us points, because what James Trafford has done in this moment at the other end, he's probably saved Burnley a point here, because if Lath gets that around him, it's 2-1, and maybe Boro go on and win the game, but unfortunately, it just catches Lath's shin as opposed to his foot, and I think that's why it doesn't quite loop over him, and that's another big Neely moment for Boro. But I think on the balance of play second half, Boro created by far the more big opportunities. Burnley, again, pressed and probed at times, but they never really created anything of note second half. I don't think Seny Dieng had to make any big saves. There was one, I think, from the left-hand side, from Brownhill, I think, that he had to make, which was comfortable. But Boro limited Burnley to not much in the second half, and we were the much more progressive, proactive, attacking, chance-creating team in the second half. And maybe on another day, could have, should have won the game. But overall, you know, on the balance of play, draw's a fair result for me. Although just due to game state and where we were second half, you could say Boro, should have won the game with the chances we had, but down to Burnley's sheer dominance in the first half, I think they definitely warranted a point from this game too. So overall, two very good teams going at it. Two very good teams, two very different teams, posing different questions of one another, and I think equally, as I predicted and as I thought, cancelling each other out. And I don't think there's any damage done here. I don't think there's any slack that either team should get. I think it's two very good teams going at it, head to head, throwing everything they had at each other, depending on their strengths and weaknesses, and coming out with a point apiece. Fair result, and I think both teams can come away in saying that it was the fair result. And the stats kind of back that up. You look at the possession, I think Burnley edged it mostly down to how much they had first half. The XG was pretty tight between the two, although Boro had slightly more. Shots on target and shots on goal were pretty similar as well. Boro had more big chances, which I think, equates to what I was mentioning about the chances we had second half. But accurate passes, everything is pretty similar. You look at the shot maps as well. Not too much between the two. Boro having a few more shots inside Burnley's area. You can see what I mean by Boro limiting Burnley to not very much. They didn't have many shots in and around Boro's 6-yard box. But, it was a game that ebbed and flowed. Both teams had momentum. And both teams, I think, were well worthy of a point. And it's definitely one, I think, as a Boro fan, I'd take and maybe given our position in the league just to maintain the gap with Burnley. I think it's maybe a better point for us than it is for the Clarets. Looking through Boro's 11 then, I think there are some really outstanding performances here. And some are for players that I think you could say are fringe players who you wouldn't maybe include in Boro's strongest 11. But I thought they were excellent at times, and I'll get to them as we run through the 11. But as we start at the back with Sonny Dieng, as I've mentioned, another one of them games, a bit like earlier in the season, where he's not given much to do, but the ball still ends up in the back of our net. And while sometimes that can be from an individual error, from a defender, a moment of brilliance from an attacker, I think there's a mix of, as I say, the shot not being closed down. But even then, Sonny should not be getting beaten from there. Did it cost us 2 points? I mean, if Burnley didn't equalise then, I still think there's a case that they would have found a way through eventually, and the pressure would have kept on building. So, it's hard to obviously say whether Burnley would have scored regardless, but, in that isolated moment, it's a goal that should have definitely not gone in, and it doesn't look great on Senny, and as I say, the questions continue to get louder surrounding his position in the team, and maybe it is a weak point Boro have to look at addressing, if not now, maybe in the summer, if we do want to go up to that next level, top two. I think if there's an area in the team that isn't quite top two, goalkeeper is clearly one of them. The back four I thought were outstanding, to a man, every single one of them. Dijksteel deserves massive praise. He got player of the match, took his goal really well, dealt with Kolyosha really well on the left-hand side. I thought, some of his duels that he won were fantastic. His interceptions, his clearances, it was a really, really good defensive display by Dijksteel. And once again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I think his redemption is, I'm not afraid to say, I'm surprised by it. I thought Dijksteel's time at Boro might have been up, but fair play to him. He's been trusted to come in some really big games this season, and although, he's another player and it's another area of the team where I don't think Boro are quite top two, I think Dijksteel has done exceptionally well to sort of work his way back into the fold, because I thought he'd be out the door in the summer, and I'm delighted to see this redemption for him and him getting into the Boro team, playing well on big occasions like this, and maybe taking the shirt off Luke Ayling now, you'd have to say. He's put himself right in contention to be our starting right back. I'm delighted for him, and it was a great performance from Dijksteel, and same for the rest of the defenders. I thought Borges on the other side, I thought defended really well, put in a great ball for Bergzorg, which maybe he should have done better with, and I think overall Borges is just proving to be solid. And a lot of fans still aren't, convinced because they're so fixated on Ryan Giles and Borges not being Ryan Giles, but there are not many left backs, if any, who are going to be Ryan Giles. And I feel like some Boro fans have to let Ryan Giles go at this point and accept that we're never going to have Ryan Giles again. We're never going to probably have a left back like him again. We need to be used to having a left back that maybe not as good going forwards, but I think Borges is better defensively. I think he's solid, he's improving slowly, he's doing more than a good enough job. Again, like the other side, is he top two? No, but I think he's doing a good enough job for us, like Dijksteel is on the other side. And the two centre-backs were great too. Obviously, Edmondson, solid as always, maybe should have scored. Dale Fry, I've got to admit, didn't expect him to come back in to a game of this magnitude so quickly after a long-term injury, but like he did against Hull, like he did here. He defended extremely well, stood up really well, and did brilliantly, and deserves real credit for such a solid display. The midfield too were great as well. Hackney, I thought, carried the ball really well, especially second half. I think Hackney maybe stood up and drove forward a little bit more second half than he did first half, but I thought he did well. And Barlaser, I've got to say, he's the third alongside Fry and Dijksteel, who I think is a player you maybe wouldn't initially, expect to be in Boro's best 11 when Aidan Morris is back, but I think Barlaser has stood up the plate really well as well since the absentees of Aidan Morris. And again, like Hull, I thought maybe the Hackney Barlaser combo, I wasn't sure how well that would go, but yeah, his ball into Dijksteel was outstanding, and he didn't look out of place here. Barlaser, we talk about the drop off in quality in certain areas of the pitch for Boro and in certain positions, and going up against the top side here, don't think Barlaser looked out of place. I thought he did very, very well, and has certainly again played himself into starting indefinitely at the moment while these other players are out, and giving Carrick at least a thought. I'm not saying Barlaser should start in place of Aidan Morris. I'm not saying Fry should start in place of Rav Vandenberg, but they're giving Carrick a question to think about, which I think is all they can do in the other players' absences. In terms of the attacking four, I thought there were a few players who maybe this wasn't the game for. I think Bergzorg and Conway were the two. Bergzorg never could quite get a run on the Burnley fullbacks and never quite got the space to really work with, which I think he really thrives on. Maybe it was a better game for Riley McGree to just help us, maintain possession and keep the ball moving. So it wasn't really a game for Bergzorg. I wouldn't say it was a game for Conway either. He didn't really get into the game at all first half and had one half chance second half. But Lattilath seemed a lot more effective when he come on, gave us something different, running in behind, turning the Burnley defence in terms of getting them to run towards their own goal instead of playing in front of them. So I think Lattilath was maybe the better option here, but maybe Michael Carrick was saving him for the Leeds game. I'm not too sure. I'd be surprised if Conway started at Ellen Road, and that's maybe why he started here, but never could quite get into the game, I would say. And the other two I thought were in the game in spells. I thought Finn Azaz was in the game, never quite had the desired effect that he has done of late, but nearly set up Lattilath second half, when he played that great ball in behind. But, trying to unlock this incredibly resilient and strong Burnley defence is a tough ask for anyone, and he nearly did it second half when he played Lath in, and Ben Doak has always proved to be an absolute nightmare for the Burnley full-back and left-hand side, who I think did quite well up against him at times, to be fair. But as I say, in the first half, Ben Doak beat two of them, turned onto his left foot and nearly buried it in the bottom corner. So as always, Ben Doak continued to be the absolute threat that he always is. In terms of substitutes, Lath, McGree and Jones come on, although Jones come on with only a few minutes left. Not much of note for them, although Lath nearly got played through, as I say. If the ball come off his toe and not his shin, he might have got through and over the top of the goalkeeper. McGree didn't really get into the game with only 10 minutes to go. And a look at the table before we finish then. As I say, it's a result that I think short term it does okay for Boro because it keeps Burnley within the same gap, but that gap is still 6 points. And I still feel like it's a gap that is a little bit too big at this moment in time. And with Sunderland winning earlier, the gap is 5 points now to the top four. It is a little bit of a gap that for Boro to break into. I'm not too worried about Sunderland as much, but I think when you're looking at the top three, as I keep saying, I think they are just a little bit too far out for us. I think, keeping the gap as it is fine for now. Had Boro lost, then yeah, the gap would have been unsurmountable, and it just makes the Leeds game even bigger on Tuesday night, because if Leeds beat Boro, the gap's 10 points, and we are not turning that over at all. So yeah, I still think the gap to top two is way too big. Sheffield United are still to play this weekend. I just want Boro to solidify themselves into the playoff places, and if a point against Leeds does that, absolutely great. I'm not fixated on beating Leeds and clawing our way in towards the top two, because quite honestly, I don't think Boro will get top two. I want us to just consolidate a place in the playoffs and build as much of a gap to 7th as we possibly can. And whether that's winning at Ellen Road or getting a point, I think either is fine as long as we don't lose it. But it's going to be equally, if not arguably, an even tougher test midweek against Leeds than it was against Burnley. But I'll get round to that in my preview, which will be coming on the channel in a few days. But as for this game, I thought it was a really good point for Boro. Proved once again, on our day, we can compete with the best of them in this league. There wasn't a gulf in class between the two, and I think going there, which is a very tough place, taking the lead, breaching their defence, and coming away with a point amidst what was very tough conditions with the weather. A very, very good point for Boro. And it may have looked a better point if we were right up there alongside them, but sadly we're not, and that's down to the stupid points I guess we've dropped earlier in the season, more so than right now. So Boro's current position isn't, down to us drawing to Burnley last night. It's down to the points we've dropped earlier in the season, and that's our own fault for giving ourselves too much of a mountain to climb. But yeah, I think a point is still good. As long as we stay in the playoffs, that's all I'm bothered with at this moment. And we've got another tough test coming midweek against Leeds, which should be very, very exciting. But I'll be back to preview that in a few days' time, as well as round up all the Championship fixtures and results this weekend to come. So subscribe for all that good stuff as well. But until next time, guys, if you've enjoyed the video, do hit a like on the video and subscribe for much, much more. Hit the bell too so you never miss when a video drops here on the channel. As always, leave me a comment in the section below with your thoughts on this, if it was a good result for you, what you thought went right, what you thought went wrong, your standout performance, etc. And if you're listening on the podcast providers, do hit a like over there and give me a like, a rating, and a follow on your chosen podcast provider as well. But until next time, guys, if you've enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, and I'll be back to preview and review Leeds midweek, where fingers crossed Boro can pull out another fantastic result. But until then, do take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.